There is a presence that a few people carry, and the moment they walk into a room, you feel it, though you could never explain why. It is not their personality. It is not their words. It is something on them, something heavier than charm and deeper than charisma, the presence of God Himself resting on a human life. And here is what should stop you tonight. Almost no one carries it. We have filled our churches with people who know about God, who can talk about Him, sing about Him, argue about Him, and who carry nothing of Him, who walk in and out of a room and leave no trace of heaven behind them. Be honest for a moment. When was the last time you were in the presence of a person and sensed God on them? And when was the last time anyone sensed Him on you? We are a generation that cannot sit still in a silent room for 10 minutes without reaching for the phone, that has filled every gap of silence with noise. And then we wonder why we carry nothing of God, why our presence changes no room, why no one has ever felt heaven on us. Tonight I want to show you the presence of God that almost no one carries, what it is, why so few ever carry it, what it costs, and how you can begin to carry it before this night is over. Based on the teachings of A.W. Tozer, a man who refused the cheap religion of his age and would not be content with anything less than the manifest presence of the living God, we made this video, and we believe it can be an instrument God uses to speak to you tonight. Because this presence is real, it is still available, and the cost that almost no one pays could be paid tonight by you. But before this message goes deeper, I want to know where the remnant is. Wherever you are watching from right now, a flat in London, a kitchen in Lagos, a parked car in Texas, a village in the Philippines, type the name of your city and your country in the comments below. Do it now before you forget, because I believe God is gathering a remnant tonight from every corner of the earth. Men and women who are no longer content to know about God and are desperate to carry His presence. And while you are there, leave a like on this video. It tells the algorithm that this generation is still hungry for the depths of God. Type your city, pause for 10 seconds, and ask the Lord one thing. God, let me carry your presence. And now a direct and honest word from us, the ones who make these messages, because here it becomes practical. The presence of God is carried by those who seek Him in the secret place. And the secret place is exactly what this generation has lost. But almost no one rebuilds it, and the reason is not only unwillingness, it is that most have never been given a way in. We feel the longing tonight, resolved to seek Him, and within 3 days the noise and the distraction and the sheer difficulty have swallowed the resolve, and the altar stands unbuilt again. If your prayer life is inconsistent, if you are paralyzed by distraction, if you sit down to pray and have no idea how to begin or how to stay, that is not a sign that God is far from you. It is a sign that you have never been given a way in. So we built one. It is called the War Room Manual. 30 days, 30 battle-tested entries that take you by the hand into the secret place and keep you there, silencing the noise, focusing the mind, and teaching you to stay on your knees until His presence becomes real and begins to rest on your life. It will never replace your Bible. The Word is the foundation, the final authority, always. The manual is simply the structure that gets you into the room and keeps you there until He becomes real. If you are tired of carrying nothing of God and ready at last to carry His presence, you will find it in the description and pinned to the top of the comments. Now, silence your phone, close every other tab, prepare your heart, and let us sit under a message on the presence of God that almost no one carries.
Let us think tonight about the presence of God, not the doctrine of it, not the theology of it, but the carrying of it, the actual resting of the manifest presence of God upon a human life. For I am persuaded that this is the one thing that separates the Christianity of power from the Christianity of words, and that its near total absence among us is the reason our religion has become so hollow, so busy, and so cold. Let me say at the outset what this presence is and what it is not, for there is much confusion. There is a sense in which God is present everywhere. He fills heaven and earth, and there is no place we can flee from His presence. This is his omnipresence, and it is true of every place and every person, whether they seek him or not. But there is another presence the Scripture speaks of, the manifest presence, the felt and known and weighty nearness of God that rested on the tabernacle until the priests could not stand to minister, that shone on the face of Moses, that filled the upper room, that a few rare souls have carried through the centuries, so that others felt God when they drew near. This manifest presence is not automatic. God is everywhere in the first sense, but he rests, he manifests, he makes his presence felt upon those who seek him, who pay the price, who prepare the place for him to dwell. And the tragedy of our day is that we have so much of the doctrine of his omnipresence and so little of the experience of his manifest presence. We are surrounded by a God we never sense, near to a presence we never carry. Now hear me, for this is the heart of it. This presence does not rest on everyone, and it is vital that you understand why. It is not that God withholds himself from any soul that truly seeks him, not that he is reluctant to dwell with men, not that he plays favorites. The manifest presence of God is carried by few because it has a price, and almost no one will pay it. The presence of God rested on Moses because Moses sought it as no one else would. When God offered him the promised land, the milk and honey, every blessing, but said his own presence would not go up with them, Moses refused it all. "If thy presence go not with me," he said, "carry us not up hence." He would rather have the wilderness with God's presence than the promised land without it. He counted the presence of God as worth more than every blessing combined. And it was the man who valued the presence above all else, who came down from the mountain with his face shining, carrying something everyone could see. The presence rests on the soul that wants it more than anything. And we do not carry it because we do not want it that way. We want it among many other things, in the cracks of a cluttered life, and the presence of God will not be had on those terms. And mark what the presence did to Moses, for it tells you what it means to carry it. He came down from the mountain, from 40 days in the manifest presence of God, and his face shone so that the people were afraid to come near him, shone so that he had to veil his face, for the glory of the presence had marked him. He did not announce that he had been with God. He did not need to. He had carried something out of the secret place that everyone could see, a radiance he himself was not even aware of. That is what it means to carry the presence, not to talk about God, but to be so marked by him that others see it without a word being spoken. And the absence of that shining among us, the absence of any visible mark of God on the faces and the lives of those who profess to know him, is the evidence that we have not been where Moses was, have not paid what Moses paid, do not carry what Moses carried. The shining is not for Moses alone. It is for every soul that pays the price and dwells in the presence. And its absence among us preaches a sermon of its own. And go to the temple where Isaiah stood, for there you see what the presence does to a man before it can rest upon him. Isaiah saw the Lord high and lifted up, and the seraphim crying, "Holy, holy, holy," and the house was filled with smoke. And the prophet did not say, "What a glorious experience." He cried, "Woe is me, for I am undone, for I am a man of unclean lips." That is what the manifest presence of a holy God does to a man. It undoes him, it strips him, it shatters every pretense before the blazing holiness of God. And then a seraph flew to him with a live coal from off the altar and touched his lips, and his iniquity was purged, and only then was he sent. See the order, the presence, the undoing, the cleansing, the sending. We want to carry the presence without the undoing, the glory without the woe is me, the shining face without the shattering vision. But there is no carrying the presence of a holy God that does not first pass through the undoing of the self before his holiness. The man who has never cried woe is me, has never truly stood in the presence he claims to carry. And so I must press upon you the question this whole message exists to ask. If God were to weigh the longing of your heart tonight, would he find a soul that wants his presence above the promised land, above the blessings, above the comfort, above everything? Or a soul that wants his presence as one item on a long list of things it wants more? For the presence is carried by those who want it as Moses wanted it, who would trade every blessing to have it, who count 1 hour of his manifest nearness as worth more than a lifetime of his gifts. There is the difficulty, and there is the reason almost no one carries it. Not that the presence is rationed by heaven, but that almost no one wants it enough to pay what it costs. Let me tell you what carrying the presence of God will cost you, for there is a price, and the comfortable preachers of this age will not name it. It will cost you the death of self, for the presence of God and the enthroned self cannot occupy the same heart. God will not rest his manifest presence on a life where self is still on the throne, for his presence demands a cleansed and surrendered dwelling. And here is where the multitude turns back, for they will surrender much, but there is always that final reserved corner, that last citadel of self they will not yield. And it is precisely there that the presence is decided, for God will not fill a house he is not Lord of. It will cost you your comfort, for the presence is sought in the hard hours, before the dawn, on the knees, in the unhurried waiting that the frantic flesh will not give. And it will cost you your idols, every rival love, every attachment you cherish more than him, for the presence of a jealous God will not rest on a divided heart. These are the costs almost no one will pay, and that is why almost no one carries the presence. See why these costs are not arbitrary, why God has so ordered it that to carry his presence should cost a soul everything. The manifest presence of God is the holiest thing a life can carry, and it cannot rest on an unclean, unsurrendered, divided heart without being profaned. The cost is the cleansing. The death of self empties the dwelling of the pride that could not bear his presence. The surrender of comfort frees the soul to seek him in the secret place where the presence is found. The casting down of idols cleanses the heart that could not hold his presence while divided. The cost does not purchase the presence, for that is grace and cannot be bought. The cost prepares the dwelling that grace will fill, and this is why there is no shortcut to carrying the presence, no method that skips the price, because the cost is not a barrier to the presence, but the very preparing of the house in which he will dwell. Now let me speak of the great obstacle of your generation, for it is the very thing keeping the presence from resting on you. It is the noise. It is the device in your pocket that has become a tabernacle of distraction, a portable altar of light and sound that demands your attention every waking minute and leaves no silence in which the presence can be known. The presence of God is sensed in stillness, in the unhurried silence of the secret place where the soul waits long enough on God for him to become real. And your generation has abolished stillness. You cannot be quiet. You cannot be alone. You cannot endure the smallest gap of silence without reaching for the screen as a drowning man reaches for a rope. And so the presence that rests on the still and waiting soul never comes to rest on you, because you have never been still long enough to receive it. I do not say the device is evil in itself. I say it has become, for your generation, the great thief of the presence, the noise that drowns the still small voice, the distraction that empties the secret place. And part of the cost of carrying his presence in this generation is the laying down of the device, the silencing of the noise, the deliberate creation of the stillness in which alone the presence comes to rest. I want you to understand that what you believe about God determines whether you will ever pay this cost, for what comes into your mind when you think about God is the most important thing about you. The soul that thinks of God as a comfortable, undemanding deity, a celestial helper who exists to bless its plans, will never pay the cost of carrying his presence, for it does not believe the cost is necessary. It expects his presence cheaply because it has conceived a cheap God. But the soul that has glimpsed the true God, the holy, the high and lifted up, the consuming fire before whom the seraphim veil their faces, understands at once why his presence must cost everything, why the self must die and the idols fall before such a one will come to rest on a human life. The low thoughts of God that fill the modern church are themselves the reason we carry so little of his presence. We have made him small and manageable in our minds, and so we expect his presence to be cheap and convenient as well. Recover a true vision of who God is, and you will no longer wonder that carrying his presence costs everything. You will wonder rather that such a God would rest his presence on men at all. I must confront the cheap religion of our day directly, for it is the great enemy of the presence. We have built a Christianity designed to cost nothing, that asks no death, requires no surrender, demands no altar, no idol cast down, no self crucified, a comfortable, convenient religion that fits neatly into a self-centered life and disturbs nothing. And we have wondered why this cost-free religion has produced a presence-free church. But the two go together. The cheap religion that costs nothing produces the empty experience that carries nothing of God, for the presence of God was never cheap, and the religion that refuses the cost forfeits the presence by the very nature of the case. We have wanted a Christianity that costs us nothing and gives us everything, and we have gotten instead a Christianity that costs us nothing and carries nothing. A religion of words without weight, of profession without presence, of crowds without God. If we would carry his presence again, we must forsake the cheap religion that has kept us empty and embrace the costly seeking that alone prepares the soul for him to dwell. Consider two people that you may see what hangs on this cost. There is the one who has everything but the presence, the church membership, the right doctrine, the religious vocabulary, the busy service, and not 1 ounce of the weight of God, who can walk into a room and out of it and leave no trace of heaven, whose prayers carry no power, whose life carries no glory, who has the name of a Christian and carries nothing of Christ. And there is the one who paid the price, who let the self die, surrendered the comfort, cast down the idols, sought God in the secret place until his presence came, and who now carries that presence through the world, on whom the weight of God rests so that others feel him, whose words land with an authority the empty cannot manufacture, whose very presence in a room turns hearts toward God. The difference between them is not that one was granted the presence and the other denied it. It was offered to both. The difference is that one paid the cost and the other would not. Which will you be? The empty professor, full of words about God and carrying nothing of him, or one of the few who paid the cost and carries the manifest presence of the living God into a world that has forgotten what it feels like? I want to take you to the upper room, for there you see the price paid before the presence fell. 120 men and women waited 10 days. 10 days of prayer, 10 days of putting to death every petty grievance, every old wound, every quiet ambition, every secret rivalry. And then, and only then, the presence came. A sound from heaven, as of a rushing mighty wind that filled all the house where they were sitting, and they were all filled, and they went out carrying a presence that pierced the hearts of 3,000 strangers in a single day. Mark the order, for it is everything. The price first, the presence second, the 10 days of dying first, the rushing wind second. We want the presence of Pentecost without the upper room, the filling without the emptying, the weight of God without the 10 days of dying. And there is no such thing, for the presence fell on a company that had paid, and it rests still only on those who pay. And the whole history of the church cries one testimony, that the souls who carried the presence of God were first the souls who paid for it in secret. The men and women whose lives still cast a shadow across the church, those who walked into rooms and left people trembling, who prayed and heaven moved, who carried a weight of God that others could not explain, were without exception people of the secret place, who sought his presence in the hidden hours before the dawn, who paid the price that almost no one pays. They were not of another order than you. They had your flesh, your weakness, your love of comfort and sleep. But they wanted his presence above all else, and paid the price to carry it, and God rested his presence on them, so that others felt him when they drew near. The God who rested his presence on them has not changed. The cost they paid can still be paid, and the only question is whether you will pay it. And let me press upon you that this presence is not given to make you great, lest you seek it for your own glory, and so never carry it. The presence of God does not rest on a life to make it admired, to build a platform, to make a name impressive among men. It rests on the broken, the humble, the soul that has died to its own name and wants nothing but God himself. The man who seeks to carry the presence so that he may be thought spiritual, deep, anointed, will never carry it. For God will not lend his holy presence to the vanity of the flesh. He rests it on the soul, whose only cry is for him, not for what his presence might do for its reputation. So search your heart tonight and ask why you want to carry his presence. Is it to be seen as one who carries it, or is it that you are starving for him and would carry his presence in a hidden life no one ever noticed, content if only you might have him? The Lord knows the answer, and he rests his presence on the second soul and passes the first one by. I would not lay all this cost upon you without showing you the glory on the other side, for to carry the presence of God is worth infinitely more than everything it costs. What you surrender to carry it, the self, the comfort, the idols, the noise, is nothing, less than nothing, beside the surpassing worth of a life on which the presence of God rests. Ask any soul that ever paid the price and came to carry his presence, whether it was worth it, and you will hear the same answer every time, 1,000 times yes. The self that was crucified, the comforts surrendered, the idols cast down, all of it appears in the light of his presence as the wisest trade ever made, the exchange of dross for the gold of God himself. There has never been a soul that paid the cost and carried the presence and counted it too high. The comfortable, who would not pay, keep their self and their idols and their noise, and they carry nothing. The few who paid carry the presence of the living God, and there is no comparison between the two. Better to pay everything and carry his presence than to keep everything and carry nothing of him. And do not look at this cost and despair as though it were too great for a soul as weak as yours, for the seeking and the strength to seek are both the gift of God. The death of self that this presence requires is not a work of your own willpower, for the flesh will never crucify itself, but the Spirit will put to death the deeds of the body in the soul that yields to him. The very longing you feel tonight to carry his presence is his hand already upon you, drawing you, for no soul longs for his presence whom he has not first stirred to long for it. So you do not stand alone before an impossible cost. You stand before a God who calls you to carry his presence and supplies the very strength the calling requires. Bring him your weakness, your divided heart, your love of comfort, your addiction to the noise, and ask him to do in you what you cannot do in yourself. The whole of it, from the first faint longing to the resting of his presence on your life, is grace, and the God who sets the price stands ready to enable the paying. You have only to stop resisting, to yield, to begin to seek him with what little longing you have, and to trust his grace to carry you the rest of the way. So I bring you to the question, and your whole life may hang upon your answer. Will you pay the cost to carry his presence? Will you let the self be dethroned and crucified, surrender the comfort, cast down the idols, silence the noise, and seek his face in the secret place until his presence comes to rest on your life? Because the presence is available to you, not cheaply, not casually, but available on the same terms it has always been available, to the soul that wants it above all else and will pay the price. The same God whose presence shone on Moses, who filled the upper room, who has rested on a few hidden souls in every generation, waits to rest his presence on you, if you will pay what almost no one pays. The cost is real, and it is high, and it is the very reason so few carry it. But it can be paid, and the soul that pays it carries through this dark and empty world the manifest presence of the living God. And do not tell yourself you will pay this cost some day, in some more convenient season, for that is the very lie by which the presence is forever lost. Every day you delay, the self entrenches deeper, the idols grow dearer, the noise grows louder, and the soul grows more accustomed to carrying nothing of God and calling it normal. The presence is not easier to carry at 60 than at 30. It is harder, for the heart has grown more set in its empty, comfortable ways. The time to begin paying the cost is now, tonight, while the longing is awake and the truth is pressing on you, while you can still feel the ache to carry something of God that you have never carried. Do not be the soul that always intends to seek his presence in earnest later, and arrives at the end of life having professed God for decades and carried nothing of him. The cost is the same tonight as it will ever be. Begin to pay it now, while the longing is alive. Let me be practical then, for I would not send you away longing for his presence without telling you how to begin to carry it. Tonight, before you sleep, get alone with God, even if only for 15 minutes. Get to a quiet place, on your knees if your body allows, with your Bible open, and speak to him plainly. Tell him you have carried nothing of him, and you are sick of it, that you long to carry his presence as Moses carried it, that you do not know how to pay the cost, but you are willing for him to teach you. And then be still and wait, for he draws near to the soul that waits on him in earnest. He will put his finger on something, an idol, a comfort, the noise, a reserved corner of your heart. Do not argue. Surrender it. Then tomorrow, before the phone, before the news, before the noise of the day, open his word and let his voice be the first voice your soul hears, for his presence rests on the soul that is shaped by the word. And then build the altar in your home that the modern church has let fall into ruins, stone by stone, day by day, giving him the first hour or the first half hour, if that is all you have, and waiting on him until his presence becomes real. Begin small if you must, but begin tonight, for his presence comes to rest on the soul that begins to seek him in earnest, and the one who seeks him so will not seek him in vain. Do not let this be one more message that stirs you and changes nothing, for that is the very pattern of the cost-free religion I have been describing. You can be moved by a message about the presence of God and then return, unchanged, to the comfortable life that pays no cost, having added a religious feeling to a life that carries nothing of God. The stirring is not the carrying. Do not mistake the emotion you feel right now for the presence itself. Let it drive you tonight to the secret place, to begin at last to pay the cost of the presence you have so long lacked. So go and pay the cost to carry the presence of God. Let the self be dragged to the cross and crucified in its last stronghold. Cast down the idols you have loved more than him. Surrender the comfort, silence the noise, lay down the device, and be still. Go into the secret place and build the altar and seek his face with the whole heart, wanting him above the promised land and every blessing in it, until his presence comes to rest on your life. And do not pay the cost once and turn back, but build the costly seeking into the daily rhythm of your life, dying daily, seeking daily, waiting daily in the secret place, until the presence of God is no longer a thing you read about in other men, but the deepest reality of your own life, resting upon you so that others feel him when they draw near. Almost no one carries it. Be one of the few who pays the cost to carry it, and you will bear through this empty world the manifest presence of the living God, worth infinitely more than everything it cost. In Jesus' name, Pay the cost, and do not stop until His presence comes to rest on you.